What's good, guys? We got these Doernbecher 3's from 2010, and we're gonna do our best to make them look as good as new. The upper, the laces, and the soles are just caked in mud, so we're gonna remove as much mud as we can with a dry brush. Anything else we can't get out, we're gonna use water to loosen the mud. I don't even know how these shoes got dirty, but what I do know is after I'm done with them, they're gonna look 100 times better. I'm just trying to remove as much dirt as I can before I hit it with a sneaker cleaner. I'm noticing how yellow the soles are. I don't know if I'm able to bring them back to the ice blue tint that they originally came with back in the day, because it really depends on how heavily they've been worn. Because if they were dead stock and they were yellowed, you could easily bring them back to that ice blue sole. But if they've been worn a lot and the soles are yellow, you're only going to remove a little bit of the yellowing. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to remove the old glue off of the shoes. This is also going to expose fresh suede so our glue will bond better. Whenever I feel the X-Acto knife isn't cutting as smooth, I just put on a new blade. After I remove as much glue as possible on the uppers, I'm going to hit it with the Dremel tool. And the bit that I'm using, it's like a sandpaper bit, like around 40 grit. I don't Dremel the middle part because that's made of 3M material. I'm only hitting the areas that the factory originally Dremeled. If you guys didn't know, the soles are coated in white paint. This is to hide any imperfections of the midsole. They also do this for Jordan 5's and 6's too. I'm going to take all of it off, and when it's time to re-glue, I'm going to add a fresh white coat. I'll handle taking out the white film after. Right now I just want to ice the soles. And I just made my own concoction. I use food grade hydrogen peroxide at 12% strength, which is almost the same as Sally's 40 volume. Except if I make it myself, I'm not adding any hair products to the shoes that make it slippery. Once I've added the icing solution, I'm going to put them outside and let the sun do its work. I'm going to take out the old factory glue with acetone and cotton balls. This is a very important step if you want your re-glues to stay strong. The glue is 13 years old now, so it's not going to hold up. We want to make sure that our new glue that we put on bonds to the midsole and not with the old glue. I'm going to use paint stripper to remove the paint. I'm hoping it doesn't do as much damage as acetone, at least since they're both chemicals. So I'm going to apply a good amount and just wait for the paint stripper to do its work. I'm not going to use acetone to remove excess paint stripper, and the paint I'm using rubbing alcohol. Okay, so the soles have been iced, and I found it to be a whole lot easier to just use cotton balls and acetone to remove that white film on the sole. Now before I add the white film, I'm going to add a fresh layer of glue as my base first. This is going to set up the foundation to prevent or at least reduce any separations. After I lay down the adhesive, I'm going to lay down a thin coat of white paint. I basically treat it as a midsole repaint, so after I lay down my white coat of a thin white coat, I wait like 10 minutes and then I add another coat until it's completely white. So the next step is to repaint the midsole. I'm going to lay down a black base coat. Now this is what I was afraid of. The midsole got damaged from the chemicals that we used. I should have just peeled the paint off. That is the safest way to remove the paint without scratching the midsole. But I wanted to try this paint stripper since I've never used it before. So I'm gonna patch up the damage on the midsole by applying a thick coat of paint and then sanding it down. To get the deep scratches, I'm gonna be using 400 grit. And then when the scratches aren't so bad, I'm gonna work my way up to 1000 grit. It's already starting to look a little better. I'm just gonna repeat the same steps over and over again until I get the results I want. Now we're just down to the deeper scratches. I'm gonna add a really heavy coat on those areas and then sand them down to get them as smooth as possible. And I'm still using 220 grit for the deeper scratches. The black paint is finally done. It took me about 2 days to sand down and keep adding paint to get it right where I want it. I'm gonna add the second paint color using pearlescent silver from Angelus. I'm not gonna lie, after pulling off the tape, the lines were pretty crisp. The lines are more defined around the air bubble with this method, compared to the method I normally do. After the midsoles have been painted, I'm gonna add a high gloss finish to the midsole. The midsole repaint turned out really good, and you have that nice crisp line underneath the air bubble. Alright, now that everything's in order, it's time to put the shoe back together. I'm using Barge Cement Super Stick as my adhesive, and I'm going to lay down a thin layer of glue on the midsole, and then another thin layer on the icy sole. I'm gonna heat up the glue up to 130 degrees and let it cool down to 110, 115 degrees, and then I'm gonna bond them together. Now that the soles are finished, it's time to reattach them to the uppers. I'm going to use the same method as the midsole to reattach the uppers, but I'm going to reattach the toe box first, and then I'm going to reattach the heel. The last step for the re-glue is just to lock down the sides. I'm using the same paint that I use on the midsole to touch up the Jumpman on the back tabs. When I was stress testing the uppers, the toe box separated, pulling the white paint underneath, and you could see the red suede through the icy sole. So I'm just gonna patch that up. Instead of airbrushing the paint, I'm gonna mix my glue with the paint and close it together. Alright, cool. Now that the soles have been fully glued onto the upper, it's time to re-stitch the toe box. I ordered a new roll of thread for this shoe, but it came out to be a wrong size. It was a lot smaller, so I ended up using the original thread instead. The problem with using the original thread is not long enough for me to pull out of the inside of the shoes, so you really have to struggle finding the loop and make sure that the thread doesn't come off of the sewing all. I noticed that the shoes were a little faded, so I wanted to re-dye the uppers. Originally, I wanted to re-dye the whole upper, but I was thinking maybe it will like cover up the Cole lettering, so you won't even be able to see the name Cole on the uppers. So instead, I'm just gonna re-dye the elephant print. And I'm very careful for the brush to not touch the icy sole because it will dye it red. Instead of re-dyeing the whole uppers, I thought about just applying mink oil to the upper to hopefully darken it a little bit to restore the color. So after I apply the mink oil, I'm going to brush it back and forth with a brush and a sponge to bring back the suede from soaking them in water. I also noticed applying mink oil on the 3M material brought back the color, because I noticed that the ashiness wouldn't go away until I applied the mink oil. And just out of curiosity, would you guys wear a restored pair of shoes that were this bad before? And that's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe if you have not already, and give this video a like because that helps me out a lot. It costs nothing to you. And I hope y'all take care and God bless. Yay!